Stick around, we're going to have fun tonight.
Hello, hi, how are you? And welcome to another podcast by George. Well, we're back home. I'm like Jason Bourne coming back to the training grounds. If you haven't checked out the Bourne Ultimatum movie, you ought to. You'll know what I'm talking about. But I'm back on the campus of Drake University, the alma mater, and I'm in the radio and TV department in a really nice podcast studio that they have with some really nice equipment, including these Shure microphones. So I don't know if you're a regular listener and you see any improvement in the audio quality, maybe not the content if I screw it up, but the audio quality anyway, let me know because these microphones are really nice. Well, today we've got Tom Buckmiller with us. He's a professor at Drake University. He also is a musician in his own right and a good one. And I'm going to start off with a little bit of his bio here, and then we'll get to it. Tom Buckmiller grew up in south central South Dakota and in high school worked as a radio DJ for KWYRAM FM in high school. That's cool. Oh, wait, isn't South Dakota, whenever I think of South Dakota radio, I think of Tom Brokaw.
Yep.
Yeah, he came out of, was it Yankton?
Yankton, South, yep. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and I think he got fired. I think he got let go, and if I remember correctly, listening to his bio, they said he'd never have a future in broadcasting.
He did okay.
Yeah, it worked out for Tom, coming out of the same area. Well, Tom Buckmiller started playing guitar in high school and played in the band Shattered Silence with his longtime and still today best friends, Kevin Van Cleef and Justin Burtz. Shattered Silence played off and on with different lineups for over 20 years. Here in Des Moines, Tom played with some Drake colleagues in the band 100 Mondays. That's a great name, 100 Mondays, before forming Jimmy the Weasel in 2015. I can't go any further without I'm a little familiar with mob history and that type. The only Jimmy the Weasel that I know of is a mafia rat, a guy that was in the movies even, I think. Is that where the name came from?
Yep. The original drummer when we first started rehearsing was a guy named Jimmy, an Italian guy.
Yeah.
And a great guy, really nice guy. But he liked that image. And he didn't finish. He was kind of the instrumental. And he'd have me bring in a drummer or a different guitar player, and then he'd axe him right away. He did not. So I was his axe man. He'd want him fired. I'd have to do the dirty work. So I kind of gave him that name, and then he had some health issues and had to leave the band before our first gig. But
yeah,
the marketing and logo had already been created, so we had to stick with it.
Yeah.
So.
I just had a podcast on with our friends Desharm Jones here in town, and I mentioned in that interview that musicians are some of the warmest, nicest, just loving people that I've ever been around compared to some other folks that I know in sports and business and that type of stuff. I just love being around musicians. But the business itself means every now and then you got to let somebody go. You got to, the very nature of the audition business is you got to tell somebody, no, you're not a fit. You're not what we're looking for. Now, you can axe them, but you can axe them nicely. Tell us about that.
Yeah, it wasn't, it was kind of new for me. We were just starting this endeavor, and we'd bring somebody. I'm like, oh, he's pretty good. Let's, bring him back. And Jimmy would say, nope, no, we can't have him. So I said, well, who's gonna tell him? And he says, well, it's got to be you. Okay. So I was
Jimmy the Weasel.
Yeah, nobody. It's not like you're cutting the benefits or the wage, but still,
true.
It's. It's people take this very seriously.
Well, yeah.
People get into it, so it's hard to do. And I've been able to have relationships with the people in the rearview mirror, and they're good people. Good, it just wasn't a fit, and it's got to be a fit. Everybody wants to have the right fit.
Right.
So.
And there are a lot of auditions and a lot of bands and a lot of opportunities,
Exactly.
So it's not like it's their one and only shot.
And I've been cut before. I've got the axe, and it's no fun.
Yeah.
But you end up where you're supposed to be, I guess.
Well, and one of the biggest reasons that we've got Tom on the show today is he teaches a class here at Drake University. It's a blues class, and in that class he brings in some of the best local blues players, including folks that you've heard on my podcast, Bob Pace, has been here. Matt Woods, Dwight Dario has been on the show, and we've got an invitation out to Rob Lombard. I guess he's got some great stories. I mean, Rob does. So I want to get him on here, just not for his music, but just for the fact that he's been so well connected and been around for so long and been on so many stages with so many great artists. I'm really looking forward to that, and I hope we can make that happen pretty soon. Now, Tom takes the class that he teaches to local blues clubs and also into the recording studio. And before we get any further, I want to mention that he's the general editor of two books written by his class that features these people, and you can read more about them and learn more about the local blues here. One is The Life in the Key of M, Learning About the Blues, and At the Crossroads, Conversations about the Blues. So, you know, when you think about blues, I think about the clubs. I think about back in the day, the smoky venues, and there a lot of drinking and carousing going on, and a lot of these places weren't very nice, and you know, but the music was always great, and blues musicians are interesting folks in their own right. How does that work in academia? You're in a beautiful facility. I mean, you know what I mean? Yeah, that's a juxtaposition, I guess you could call it.
Yeah, I designed the class as if, what kind of class would I want to take? Yeah. So it's an orientation class, and the students, usually about 20, select the class based on it's an interest of theirs. And then they are actually grouped in living quarters based on this class. So I take them out to Lefties. You got to see the blues. You got to hear it. You got to feel it. You got to get in the front row. The people at Lefties are very accommodating. They know I'm bringing in minors, and I know these students' parents. I'm a parent myself, so
yeah.
we don't want to, we're not drinking, we're not getting in trouble. But when the Butter Cow Blues Band, there's nobody better than those guys doing what they do. So we take them, and they get blown away by the crowd interaction. How Matt and Bob will go back and forth. How Dwight is so steady back there. And they love it. That's the key. I said, this is the best homework you're going to have. I'm forcing you to go to a blues club.
Yeah, that's tough.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
So
I love meeting them. I love talking to them. And I do this thing. I introduce myself and tell them, I'm Drake alumni, class of 77. And they look at me and go, what? 77? 1977. Oh, yeah. And then you can see the wheels started. They're doing the math. My God, how long ago was that? But they're great kids, and they really enjoy it. And, we really love having them down there. And maybe that's a good place to start here with the first question about what's going on with the blues, because I look at it, it's a graying audience by and large. I mean, it's mostly old folks that go to this. You've got kids that are interested in it. Is there a chance to keep this going with these young folks?
That's one of the key questions we grapple with in the class. That every person we bring in as a guest, we ask them that question. Are the blues dying? What's happening? And so I've got a passion for keeping the blues alive, just like so many other people, including yourself, all the people doing this work to keep this. I don't think it's going to die. I think it continues to evolve and change a little bit. And my students, these 19-year-olds for 3 years, and I'll do it again next year, fourth, they're surprised of how much they actually do like it. I think they think it's an antiquated music form, but when we draw the lineage to how rock and roll was born from it, and how even modern hip hop has roots in this, I think their mind is blown a little bit, and I think they gain a deeper appreciation for it. So it's fun to see them. I don't think they become huge on B.B. King fans, but when they interact with the players and understand it better, have conversations, I think it helps, and I think it opens your eyes.
So talk to us about the young people themselves. We're talking 19-year-olds?
Yep. Many of them are musicians themselves. So I had a very talented oboe player. I had some choral. So they get music, I think they look at the 1-4-5 chord progression in the blues, the 12-bar blues, as pretty simplistic coming in. But then they go and hear Bob Pace and Matt and how they use dynamics, and how Dwight in the back will the shuffle is so infectious, right? And so I think once they understand the nuances of a relatively simple form, and that it's not so simple, easy to play but difficult to feel, I think that's another piece that they're pretty musically savvy. Like, they get that.
Yeah.
But we have to coach them, and we have to show them what to look for.
Yeah. What about relating to the people that age just in general. A lot of folks, and me in particular, I don't spend a lot of time around 19-year-olds. So like I said, I tell a joke or two, and it's different. I mean, it's not impossible, but it's different.
I think the students, and I'm the same way. I'm older than, my kids are a little bit younger, and I'm always a little, sometimes 18-year, 19-year, they say, and they kind of shock you, throw you back like, whoa, I am really old. But I think one of the key is the feedback that I get is, we love how passionate you are about this. And I think they get that, and they understand that. But, the other thing is, the Blues Society, the Central Iowa Blues Society, and blues fans in general are a very hospitable and warm group.
Yeah.
So when we take them out in the public, in the real live venues to see it, man, these folks are so nice. They just want to talk with our young people. There's no hostility. There's not. It's great. It's warm. And my students, these 19-year, are like, wow, that is there's so much more than the music. It's a social, historical piece too, and so I'm appreciative that the blues is so strong, and the fan base and the Central Iowa Blues Society is so strong here, because it's really an open door to welcome these young new fans into the blues.
Give us a little bit of a skeleton and outline of a curriculum for a class like this. Does it start with the originations, the beginning of the blues?
Yeah, the 4 periods we talk about: slavery, then the sharecropping, and then how it moves to Chicago, and that's kind of the most exciting time, I think, when blues gets loud, I guess, for the student. And then how it splits off and goes rock and roll, and then Texas blues, West Coast blues, jump blues, all those type of things. So we kind of stick along those, but they really like the personalities. And we do a lot of breakdowns, so I'll show them when B.B. King was in Cook County Jail. They really get that.
Yeah.
Or we'll look at, they want to hear Stevie Ray Vaughan, so we'll do that. This year was unique because one of the students was a great grand nephew of Bobby Rush, a Hall of Famer.
Sure, yeah.
So we kind of contact Bobby's agent, and they were great to work with. Bobby's 85. And so but they set up some live interviews, and we got to chat with Bobby, Grammy Award, and that was great to have that connection. And Bobby's a great entertainer, great singer. He's not a perfect role model at all times,
Well, yeah.
but that's the blues.
Yeah.
Blues is life, and that's one of the key things we talk about in the class. Like, the blues is life, and it's the good, the bad. It's tough times and it's great times, and I want a class that's not really filtered that much, because that's what life is, and the students get it.
And how long have you been doing it?
I'll do my 4th year coming up next year. So
What's your class size like generally?
But 2021, it always fills up quickly. I think the reputation of homework of going out to classes. Also, I don't do a required book. We do a lot of resources, but I make them buy a ukulele. And the performance final is that they have to play a 12-bar blues on the ukulele. Guitar is a little more expensive and harder. I think the ukulele is an affordable introductory instrument. And then we'll go into the studio. So we go to Sonic Studios, which is in the Drake neighborhood. And I know the engineer there. He lets us have a couple hours, and we lay down a couple songs. We do post work, and we do some harmony over top. Sometimes it's blues, and sometimes it's not. But the kids just have a fun time with that.
That's great.
Yeah.
Well, they should. We talked about the ukulele on an earlier podcast a little bit. Eddie Vedder did an entire album of ukulele. Now, I haven't heard it, but I mean that might bring them a little bit more into the modern era if they checked out Eddie on the ukulele.
Yeah.
Maybe it's an instrument that's coming back. Well, that's great. You talked about this hard life with Bobby Rush. Is he out of Chicago? Where's
Yep, he's from the Mississippi Delta, and then
moved up there like a lot of guys?
Yeah. So I
Yeah.
think right now, I don't know if he's living in L.A. right now. But he's a great entertainer, and he's got his background, his
my
backup
God.
dancers,
Yeah.
which are some of my students were a little surprised at that. But he's an entertainer, and he's well loved, and
Well, yeah, I mean,
finally got that Grammy.
Well, when I think of Bobby Rush, or even now Buddy Guy, people like that, to me, they're the last living connection to be a peer with Muddy Waters and people like that. I mean, that's fading away. I had Todd Parkmore on the podcast not too long ago with Big Head Todd and the Monsters. He hung out with Honey Boy Edwards and some of those guys. Well, those guys were the last links to Robert Johnson. Actually knew him and could talk about that on stage. I mean, that's a really cool thing. And that's all kind of passing away.
I love that. I watched a documentary last night on the juke joints down in the Delta,
Yeah.
and I just love that, and the simplicity of that. Guys like Matt Woods, he's keeping the country blues, the Delta blues
Is
alive.
He good? Howdy, he's great.
Yeah,
Jeez.
and Matt Woods is a friend of mine. I was a fan of his first, and I think him and Bob Pace have really been great ambassadors. There's so many in the town, you can't name everybody, but for me personally, Bob and Matt have been nice mentors, friends. They help me out. They tell me what's good and what's not good. They're just good mentors. I owe a lot to those two guys.
Yeah, wonderful people. I'm glad to count them among my friends and actually as guests on the podcast. And if you haven't heard those guys, go back and check them out because Matt plays most of his episode right there at his kitchen table on that National steel guitar that he's got. And God, what a touch that man's
got. It's backwards. I don't know how he plays it backwards like that. But
yeah.
He does it right.
He's a great guy. Well, when you talk to the students about the life of the great bluesman, and I'm reminded of Stevie Ray Vaughan. Stevie said he actually believed, and I mean he was all in, obviously, on being a bluesman, that he had to be like that. And he about killed himself doing it before he came to the realization that maybe he didn't have to do that. Sobered up, cleaned up, and made that last album. It was an In-Step. I can't remember what his last album was. Yeah. And was delighted that it was stellar, that you didn't have to be like that. You didn't have to drink yourself to death to do the blues and be great at it. I mean, there's a message there.
Yeah. Yeah, I think, blues entertainers, they live the life, but I think everybody has the blues in some form. And I don't discredit hard life, easy life. Everybody's got their own things going on. But a lot of times the job of the blues musician is to help others that have the blues to escape for a little bit. And so whether it's singing about it or not, and I think the bluesmen are such good storytellers that you get lost in their stories, and then they come, a song on top of that takes it away. And the blues man and blues woman is such a lost art, and that I'm glad there's some people are continue to keep this form alive because it's just different. It's not as popular as it used to be, but it's an important social historic part of our country and our rich music that we have to pay attention to.
Yeah. Well, I'm a B.B. King devotee like you are, and I mean I loved his autobiography or biography. I can't remember. It was his story anyway. And he was from Indianola, Mississippi, which I love that connection between that and the Indianola that I know here in Iowa. And he would be the first one to tell folks that, you don't have to be sad. Blues isn't necessarily a sad thing at all. And Jimmy the Weasel's like that. You guys are a lot of fun. I mean, you're kind of what people might call a blues show band, or what you got a lot of guys playing and women playing, and it's just a good time. It's not a sad time at all. Some people miss that.
Yeah, I think it's kind of like a Blues Brothers type thing.
Yeah, exactly.
With a sister out there.
Yeah.
And we've been able to appeal to some different audiences. We're kind of right on that edge when blues and rock and roll, we're a little bit messy in there. So we go a little bit of early rock and roll, some soul, a little bit of funk. But yeah, we just want people to come out and have a good time. It's like the old juke joints where it gets a little rowdy. We get people on stage, and that band is 8-piece. That's plenty of people to pay at the end of the night. But man, it's a good band because there's limited drama. People love to listen to each other solo. We got a lot of soloists, sax, keyboard, couple guitars, harp. And I think this mutual admiration of the people on stage.
Exactly.
We just have fun.
Well, I mean, that is the whole thing. And you can't overstate that from a fan's perspective, for somebody that watches you guys, because it's fun because you're having fun. It reminds me of this guy I knew that used to tell jokes. Well, this guy, his jokes weren't really that much better than anybody else, but they were so funny to him that he almost couldn't get them told because he was, just breaking up and laugh. I mean, there was no way you couldn't laugh at this guy. Mm-hmm. It was funny to him. It was funny to you. It's fun to you guys on stage, and it's fun to us to watch that. I mean, that's a great thing. And if you haven't checked out Jimmy the Weasel, get out there and see those guys.
Appreciate it. Thank you.
Well, I mean, it's great stuff. So, I think about B.B. King and his music, and the fact that, and he would have been kind of like Bobby Rush and so many other people. They came out of that Delta Deep South area and moved north. B.B. went to Memphis. Some of the guys that were really brave and could tolerate the cold went to Chicago. And are those the kind of like the hot spots, the focus areas of your class, or do you? Yeah,
I think so too. I think you had to understand the roots of where it comes from and the original. But like you said, I think the students, and I think my preference too, is that Chicago blues era where that was to some extent the pop music of the time. It's louder, it's a little bit rowdier, and you got personalities, Muddy and Buddy Guy and those type of things. Like those are interesting personality stories to talk about. So. So I've got a 2-year-old son, and my wife, it's time to name the boy, and what are we going to name him? And I said, here's what I'm voting for Freddie Vaughn. Freddie King is one of my guys, and the Vaughn brothers, Jimmy Vaughn is one of my favorite. And somehow I got that through the channels, and we got him named Freddie Vaughn. So,
my God, good on you.
So hopefully he, I don't know if he'll be a blues man, but hopefully he just, if nothing else, can appreciate and here's me playing it. Here's the passion I have for that music, the friends that I play with, I hang with. It's not about getting in trouble anymore. Those are younger days gone by. It's just love of the music, love with playing other people, and to be honest, it's the folks that come out and see Matt Woods and the Butter Cow and Bob. Those are passionate fans, and they know their stuff. Like it's a highly intelligent, music savvy audience, and they're great to be around.
Well, and of course, nobody I like better in the world than Stevie Ray Vaughan. God rest his soul. And that I always encourage people, if I want to try to get them hooked on blues, big-time electric guitar blues or whatever, watch the recordings of those Austin City Limits performances that he did. I mean, there's nothing better than that in the world. Mm-hmm. Now, it'll make you feel great because of the music, but it'll make you feel sad, too, because of what happened to Stevie Ray Vaughan. I mean, I remember that. It was in August of 1990, I think, in that Alpine Valley accident. Yeah.
So Jimmy Vaughn, his brother,
yeah.
I've seen him 3 times in Des Moines the last couple of years, and last time he was at Woolies. And so we've seen him before, and he's getting older. I really like his show, but I kind of expected to see what I see, just a good. But we were surprised. My wife and I were there, and it was a good-sized crowd, not packed, but a good-sized crowd. But he had that crowd moving and grooving. A couple got up to the front, started dancing, and by the end of the show, the aisles and the sides were full. People were standing up, and sometimes blues isn't always conducive to that, but you could really see Jimmy feed off the audience and playing that Texas Shuffle over, and they went more into deeper than that. You kind of go in knowing he has a connection to Stevie Ray, as a Stevie Ray fan like yourself. But then, and he'll play a couple songs, and you try to extrapolate what it'd be like, if Stevie was here. But Jimmy does his own thing, and man, that was a good show. And
well, and his style's always been that way. He's always been kind of a little bit more like that. And Stevie was pretty much, he in the maybe Buddy Guy genre, a little bit more like that. Just love those guys and miss Stevie Ray Vaughan. So,
and that's how in the '80s. I grew up in the '80s, and so I liked the Zeppelin type stuff. And then the Stevie Ray Vaughan really captured me. Like, here's my gateway drug. And then you look back. Well, who influenced him? And that's where you get to Albert King and the other. And then you keep going back, and then that's a rabbit hole. That's a lifetime experience to get to the roots of Stevie Ray Vaughan, and then you can hear that. And Stevie did his own thing. It was great, and but he also gave a lot of credit to the people who mentored him, and that's that blues lineage, blues family tree that keeps growing.
Okay, so I know you cover Pride and Joy. I was thinking of this on the car ride over. I gotta make a request. I gotta talk to Bob about this too. And that line where you mess with her, you see a man get mean. Mm-hmm. Stevie would always take his right hand and do this fist pump thing. This threatening, shaking fist deal when he played. Guys don't do that. You got to do that. I love that. I mean, that was a great part of that song. I don't
know if I could scare anybody.
No. Well, Stevie was an imposing figure. True. I mean, he wasn't a huge guy, and I was reading about that Alpine Valley accident. I mean, you're a student of Stevie more than I am, maybe. I don't know if you're aware of this or not, but a lot of people didn't know this. That guy took off in that helicopter with Stevie on board and flew straight into a hill, straight into a mountainside kind of up there in Alpine Valley is what I thought. Mm-hmm. Well, I got to reading into that. That was actually what they hit was man-made because that's a skiing area or something like that. Sure. And so it was relatively new. And I've wondered since, I haven't looked into it anymore because it makes me so sad every time I look into it, but did that pilot know about that hill? Was that on the topographical flying maps that were, in the helicopter and all that kind of stuff? Doesn't make any difference, but did that play a role in that accident? Like I said, that's I wasn't aware of that.
It changes things when you think about fate and history and those type of things.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah, 1990. I remember. I remember I was at work and somebody had a TV on and came to it and went home and watched the news at noon. Okay, so before we leave here, and I'm looking at my little ticker. It always comes about 25 minutes here. We're in. Tell us about the books.
Sure. So I want the students to have my pedagogically or instruction and teaching wise. I want the students to have do stuff that has value outside of the classroom. They can write a paper and I can read it. So what? I want them to have bigger aspirations. So we say we're going to write a book. So every class that's a culminating project. It's big. I pull my hair out over it. But I match the kids up the first year. The focus on artists. So I matched every student with a local artist. So they went out and met Bob Pace, Joe and Vicki Price were great in the book. James, Rob Lombard. So anyways, and my philosophy is let's go knee to knee with these folks, and it's the stories that's going to help connect us. Year 2 was last year, and I brought you a complimentary copy of the book for you.
Thank you.
I said, well, the holy trinity of a blues community, so you get the fans, you get the artists, and you get the venue. So last year we focused on the fans. So each student got matched up with a local passionate fan, and then they kind of told their story of why they love the blues, how they got into it. And this year, this current year, we're wrapping up the book is venues. So, Blues on Grand was the quintessential blues club in Des Moines. That place is great, but it's no longer here. Yeah. So there's probably not a dedicated place that has a blues, but there's pockets of venues. So we focus on 7 venues in town that support the blues, and we got the fan and artist perspective of that. So we went in, describe from the Carl's Blues Jam, which is a great jam on Tuesday nights. Yeah, exactly. To Lefties and some of these places. And so that's the new book. It's not out yet. It'll probably be out in a couple months. And, these are not high-selling books by any means, but it's just one way we can get some of these things documented. The local blues scene in Des Moines is strong. There's vibrant characters. It's alive and well. And we're at least documenting it in our own way. And through the eyes of a student, you never know what you're going to get. But I think these students, for the most part, are respectful of the genre, of the people, of the place, and for the most part, they get it right. And it's a great hobby. It's, like I said, it's time-consuming. It's a lot of work, but you can find them on Amazon if you want to support. All the proceeds come back into the program, and then what we do, we buy books for all the people, the artists, and give it back. We don't make money on the deal. But
yeah, I'm an alumni. I might want to take the class. We say it fills up quickly. Do they have it online? Is this any talk about maybe making this class available online to folks?
It's an orientation type class.
Oh, okay.
So it's the first semester freshman type class. You probably audited, or I got to get you getting a guest speaker. Let's get you in that role is what we need to do. But it's just Tuesday, Thursdays, and over the lunch hour. And like I say, the piece then Bob Pace, Rob, all those guys come into class. Dwight comes in and they'll perform. So they'll do a song, talk about it, and a lot of it's the Rezo National Steels come in. So we talk about what's the difference between slide and why is this so rough. And Matt Woods sounds like he's gargling.
It's amazing.
Yeah, exactly.
I got he's like a transformation. I mean, it's amazing stuff. Yeah.
And in those artists, I got to give them credit. They do it for free, right? Yeah. So I'm getting this free World Hall of Famers, and these students are getting front row, and they can ask questions and. You wouldn't expect anything else, but the local artists here in town are wonderful. They get it, and I just think this is a class I would want to be a student in, selfishly. And it's a writing class. I forget to mention that, but that's where we come out of the book. But it's just a fun alternative class for me to teach.
Yeah. And before we go, I want to put in some music because a couple of guys talking about music is one thing, but hearing it's another thing. What of Jimmy the Weasel, something in your background? What could we pick up and play a little bit of on the podcast that folks would enjoy that is readily available? What would you recommend?
Yeah, I don't know. I like the old I'm trying to think. We'll do a lot of Freddie King stuff. I like that type of stuff, and that's usually later in the set. Sometimes when the bar's shutting down a little bit, we get into the hardcore blues. Muddy. The crowds love Mojo, Muddy Waters.
Sure,
so that'd be a good one. We always get people up on stage. Sarah Ling is our vocalist. It's Dr. Sarah Ling. She's a family physician, and whatever she sings, she doesn't.
Well, I love that funny song that you can have my husband, but you can have my man. What is that?
Yeah, that have my husband, but please don't mess with my man.
Yeah, I love that. I'm going to put you on the spot here a little bit because I'm hearing through the grapevine that you personally, as a player, you're kind of stepping up your game. You're getting better. And I got to tell you something, at my age certainly, but even at your age, it's great if you're getting better at anything. So are you spending some more time on it, or you just...
Yeah, it's an easy passion for me. And like I say, you talk, Matt Woods, Bob Pace have just taken me under their wing in a lot of different ways. And my kids are young enough where I can play a little bit more, and so I'm doing some acoustic stuff now. I've got the Weasels. I've got another smaller band, Tom Buckmiller and the Tone Tailors, and that's more pretty hardcore blues, those type of things. So you know what? It's a labor of love, and I got a long ways to go. I just love being a blues man, and I love just doing it. And so I guess I'm lucky that I can do something I love to do and have great mentors and great conversations like today. Thanks for having
great.
me on.
That's what the podcast is all about. Well, you got blues is about passion, and Tom Buckmiller has got that passion, and he's sharing it with the young people of America, because these folks are coming from all over the country here to Drake University and taking this course, and that's great stuff. So Tom Buckmiller, today's guest, and we'll come back, we'll revisit this. Maybe we'll get a student on, or maybe we'll, maybe put some of the Jimmies on or something like that. There's a lot of great opportunities here for a future podcast. But for now, that's another podcast by George.